Well, if you're just joining us, we've been discussing this evening the looming tariffs that were announced by the US President Donald Trump, confirming in a letter last night to President Cyril Ramaphosa that from the 1st of August, South African products headed into the US market will face a levy of 30%. And he's warned, by the way, that if the South African government imposes a reciprocal tariffs on American goods coming in our direction, the Americans will then add whatever percentage that is to their charge on South African products being exported to Americans. Let's talk more now about a gathering held today here in Johannesburg. People called together basically by the law firm Katlego Legodi as well as the accounting firm Deloitte to basically explore how the South African business community can prepare itself for the possibility of a tariff increase from the United States. Our reporter Katlego Legodi from the economics desk with us on set this evening. Katlego, good to see you. So how do Deloitte and Katlego Legodi believe that South African businesses would be able to weather the storm if indeed, come the 1st of August, this 30% tariff kicks in?
A very good evening to you, Tembekile, and to our viewers at home. You do get a sense that companies are navigating uncertain times. Today, the gathering by CDH, Katlego Legodi, and accounting firm Deloitte really looked at the uncertainties that companies have been navigating over time. You see them taking stock of really the 90 days of that pause and how most of the companies were supposed to use that to really come through with resilience methods that would help them navigate the tariff when Donald Trump makes that announcement. So this gathering was not in anticipation of that announcement of the 30%, but it falls into what these companies have been working on for quite some time. They do have Deloitte, for instance, has a methodology. This would be a Deloitte Stability Index that they've been working on over time that would track, how companies are moving, how companies have been, navigating the shocks. And you see them taking us back all the way to COVID-19 to say that as they work with these companies in 10 of the jurisdictions on the continent, you hear them saying that South African companies are really at the back end. This index would give you a score out of 100. Closer to 100 would say that you are stable as an entity, but less than that would say that you are really in trouble. And we see them saying that most of the companies are not even inching closer to 100, and most of them would find themselves today in shock and trying to understand how then this 30% tariff, if it kicks in on the 1st, would impact them going forward. And you hear Deloitte telling us that most of these companies would go under if then they're not planning and just taking into consideration scenarios that would play themselves out beyond the 31st of or the 1st of August.
And in terms then of the scope of the forecast, how wide did the two companies basically throw their nets? We know South Africa exports vehicle parts, right, to the Americans. Produce as well, fresh produce is another big money spinner for the South African economy in terms of American income. And how big are the organizations that they've looked at? You've just said already that some might not even survive a scenario where this tariff kicks in.
So they basically played out scenarios in terms of the different industries. So today you would find people from the banking sector, you find people from the automotive sector, those that are in the mining sector, just looking at how most of them are going to navigate some of these shocks. And this index not only covering South Africa, but looking at the continent at large. Just looking at the 10 jurisdictions and looking at how then most of these markets and these players would move into this space of resilience beyond the tariffs announced by Donald Trump. And this, we are talking about small companies. They looked at macro companies and big companies that would be existing within this space. And you hear most of them just talking about the shocks being all-encompassing, meaning that you can't then say that there's a big company, then you are navigating issues better. But they do have a somewhat of solutions that they are working on in terms of how these companies can be resilient amid all of these uncertainties. And they're talking about adapting being one of them. They're talking about stabilizing being one of them, and just ensuring that you push to be resilient amid all of these shocks. And this will do with good practices as well in terms of companies ensuring that they practice better and they do reach out when they are in trouble, which is why then today you find them discussing also the business rescue processes. You find them looking at the cash flow of these companies, and you find them just also looking at how then most of these companies can look into their books to ensure that they capitalize on technology, optimization, and just coming through, navigating these shocks beyond the 1st of August.
How do they, I wonder if the forecast speaks to the unpredictability of the trade relationship with the United States. I mean, 90 days ago, this tariff increase was meant to kick in. Donald Trump, the president of the US, then saying, well, I'm offering an extension. Countries can send their teams to Washington to negotiate either an extension or a change in terms. That was going to lapse tomorrow, the 90 days on the 9th of July. And now he's saying, for South Africa, for instance, this 30% tariff on products will kick in on the 1st of August. How much does that complicate the ability of businesses to be agile and adaptable to the scenario?
It has become a race against time, and that is how most of these businesses have been navigating over time, especially when we saw they took it all the way back to Liberation Day when he was announcing some of these tariffs and just talking about how companies from there should have been, tweaking some of their operations in line with the uncertainty that exists there. But you hear them saying that the lessons should have also been learned from the COVID-19 times, because that was also a global shocker for some of these companies and some emerging markets. And us, we are an emerging economy as South Africa, and you hear them just talking about how from there some of these lessons should begin to play themselves out. But also something that was notable, Tembekile, would be what they picked up as well in the index, to say there are companies that are in denial about where we find ourselves now. So most of them would want to downplay the impact of these tariffs, would want to maybe sit back and gauge how government would navigate this. And they are advising against that, to say that really when you look at it, you do find yourself in the back burner when something like this is dropped like at a penny like that. So you do see them saying plan for scenarios. We do see them saying that you must have also methodologies that work to your company that would speak to how then you are navigating these shocks. They did mention AGOA, to say that we're still uncertain as to whether AGOA is fully gone or there's going to be somewhat of a new approach to these preferential markets, which is what has been playing itself out. But to see them as well, just talking about opportunities that exist within the BRICS sector, to say that we need to put emphasis on that. We need to then put emphasis on the Africa Free Continental Trade Area and that agreement to come through for emerging economies like South Africa, and just ensuring that companies don't go under, because as we speak right now, they did admit that South African companies have been navigating a strenuous situation with a stagnant and a slow growth economy, and some of these geopolitical developments don't come through to serve them any better, which is why they need to plan, and plan.
Katlego Legodi, thank you very much for that, Katlego. One of our reporters from the SABC Economics Desk, speaking to us about that gathering today, where we got a forecast from Deloitte as well as Cliff Decker-Hofmeyer as far as expectations and how South Africa's business sector can cushion itself, if you will, from the effects of the looming Trump tariffs.